blossoms is Sakinah on me. How do I feel? It's like peace inside my heart, and I know that it's real.
All praise is due to Allah, the one and only one God. May the peace and blessings be upon His beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallama tasliman kathira. I'd like to start first by a person who came to Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, and he said, I just had a baby boy. If you can tell me what do I owe him of his rights? He said, you are too late. He said, he was born today. He said, you should have came to ask me how to choose his mother. That's when the rights of your children start. Talking about the Islamic perspective of how to stop domestic violence goes really from the core understanding of Islam. Islam tells us that our presence on earth is to worship God. In Surah Al-Dhariyat, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ, that I have not created jinn or ins but to worship Him. So I don't know where could someone see worshiping God through beating up people. I can't make the connection. It just goes against what Islam is all about. I read many verses, Allah speaking about the aggression, the dhulm, how hatred is it to Allah, from the type of aggression that was on the level of Pharaoh, or the dhulm where the Prophet ﷺ said, do you know who is the bankrupt? They said, the one who has no money, O Prophet of Allah. He said, the bankrupt from our nation or from our ummah is the one who comes at the day of judgment with salah and siyam and zakah and hajj. He has done all that. But he would come where he had hit people, or said foul people, or hurt people in their words. فَتُؤْخَذُ مِنْ حَسَنَاتِهِ. So people will stand up at the day of judgment and will start asking to be tried fairly. So when people come and ask for their right to be paid back to them, his rewards will be taken out from him, his own good deeds, and would be given to those people whom he mistreated, until there is no more hasanat left for him. And then they will say, there is no more hasanat left for them, for this person. Allah will say, take from the sayyi'at, the bad deeds of that person, and put it on him. And then he will be sent into hellfire for that. I see it in the holy hadith, al-hadith al-Qudusi, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, Ya ibadi inni haramtu dhulma ala nafsi. O my servants, I have declared that aggression is haram on myself. وَجَعَلْتُهُ بَيْنَكُمْ مُحَرَّمًا, and I have declared it that it is haram among you. فَلَا تَظَالَمُوا, let no one be in a status of aggression toward another person. I see it in the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ said, Al-Muslimu akhul Muslim, a Muslim is the brother of a Muslim. لَا يَظْلِمُهُ, he will not mistreat him. وَلَا يَحْقِرُهُ, he will not humiliate him. If I'm supposed to do that with someone that I don't know, a stranger who happens to be a Muslim in the street, what about my own family? If I'm supposed to be so much sensitive about that with people who happen to be my brothers in Islam and the general concept of being brothers and sisters, what about my own family, my own, my wife or my children, etc., etc. So starting from there, it's a matter of an education approach, that there is no place in Islam for dhulm, and beating people and hitting people and being aggressive toward people is part of the dhulm. Imagine you are, as a man, if the person is abusive, stopped by one of those secret police, in some of the Muslim or Arab countries, and you have been humiliated or beaten in front of people, how would you feel? That's exactly the same way if a person who in front of you happens to be a female or a child, that they are helpless, they can't defend themselves, and you fail to communicate your matters with them, and then you take it into force, and you take it, as some people like to call it, the shortcut. The shortcut that will guarantee you that you are engaging in an act that is haram, and that would lead you, as the hadith said, probably into losing all your hasanat, the good deeds that you are doing, probably even acquiring some sayyat that will end you up in heaven and hell, God forbids. When we talk about prevention of domestic violence, we talk about education to our children when they are young, that marriage is a place for Sakinah. وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ أَنْ خَلَقَ لَكُم مِّنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ أَزْوَاجًا لِتَسْكُنُوا. Sakinah comes from the word Sakinah, to be stable, where you rest. And this is the Sakinah, and then it was brought next to love and mercy, mawadda wa rahma. So the Sakinah and the perspective of the human person, that is from within, that is a gift to be put in the heart of people from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But this gift, you need to be worthy of it, to deserve it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَالَّذِينَ جَاهَدُوا فِينَا لَنَهْدِيَنَّهُمْ سُبُلَنَا. Those who strive to please us, we shall guide them to our path. So to acquire Sakinah in your life, in your heart, with you and your family, you have to be reaching out to get it, and then Allah will put it in your heart as a gift, or something that you might look at as a fruit, an outcome of your effort, and that where is it being put. So education is very good from the time when our children are young, that this is a place where you're gonna go and relax and look. Every time I do a marriage, a nikah in my office, the first thing I ask the couples who are why are you getting married? Is it just a social, you're now 25 and she's 21 and it's time? In Islam, we are told that even marriage is an act of worship toward God. مَنْ تَزَوَّجَ فَقَدْ اسْتَكْمَلَ نِصْفَ دِينِهِ. The one who gets married, he has fulfilled half of his faith. So the same way I look at my prayer or my fasting or my pilgrimage, that I need to perfect it, to present it to Allah as an act of worship, marriage is an act of worship that I need to present to Allah. So I am in the business of trying to perfect it in the way that it will be accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If it takes to educate yourself about it, if it takes to practice patience, if it takes to be responsible, if it takes to be there for your family whenever you are needed, then all these components come into not just the level of performance or doing your duties, but rather than al-ihsan, because acts of ibadah rise from the normal level of performance to the ihsan. Ihsan means أن تعبد الله كأنك تراه, to worship Allah as if you see Him. But if you don't see Him, He sees you, meaning to associate the conscience that Allah is watching you constantly, so you always perfect your acts. In marriage, when you are alone, in your house where there's no one else to see you or to document your actions, you have to have ihsan. You have to be connected with Allah, that Allah is watching you. That's why the Prophet ﷺ once gave a description to fear Allah in the treatment of your wives. فَإِنَّهُنَّ عِنْدَكُنَّ عَوَانٍ. They're more like, in your house, you're in charge. You can be abusive or you can be honorable. You choose what to do. And the Prophet was ﷺ directing us to be honorable with them. When we talk about prevention matters in matters of preventing domestic violence, the choice that we make for our children when they grow up and get married, for the time being I'm going to be a little bit fast, but also seminars prior to marriages. I was told that Malaysia has a 2-week program for anyone who wants to get married, that they have to go 5 days a week and finish these 2 weeks program. It's presented by religious leaders, by professionals, and all that. It covers all the area of marriage. What is it all about? To live with someone. 20-some years I'm living in my own family, my own way, and then here comes another person with their own different ways. How can we communicate? How can we cope? How can we respect? And it was said that Malaysia has the least number of divorces as far as I know. Unfortunately, we have tried that, and Imam Majid, who was interviewed here in the video, came once and presented a 2-day seminar at our masjid. And he said, we should do this in our masjid. We said, Imam, practically this is sometimes tough. We have people coming from other states, they have 1 day. They just want to get the nikah done and go back, or people don't have time. But we can go and educate people about the importance. So they can come even after the nikah, prior to the marriage, and sometimes many people do the nikah and delay the marriage 1 month or 2 months, whatever. In that period, let us say, okay, can you come in between one-on-one, I can make a designated day with all the couples coming at one day seminar, or I can do it one person at a time and educate them not just about it's haram to beat or to hit or something like that, but how to enjoy life as a husband and wife. I mean, this is meant to bring mawadda and rahmah and sakinah. And if people are not enjoying that, then we should feel responsible that marriage is meant for these people to enjoy these things. And these are quality type of relationships. Many references in that perspective about education in the Quran and the Sunnah. The Prophet, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَعَاشِرُهُنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. Treat them bil-ma'ruf. The term ma'ruf is so beautiful in the Quran. What is known to be honorable, what is known to be acceptable. The term ma'ruf, we are the ummah of al-amr bil-ma'ruf. We are the ummah, سَرِّحُونَ بِمَعْرُوفِ عَاشِرُهُنَّ بِمَعْرُوف. The term has been used in many different ways in relation to what, and the concept of value, if it was moral or ethical, or if it what was acceptable in the tradition of the people as to be honorable and acceptable too. The Prophet, for example, ﷺ said, أَكْمَلُ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ إِيمَانًا أَحْسَنُهُمْ أَخْلَاقًا وَأَلْطَفُهُمْ بِأَهْلِهِ. The most perfect people of faith are those who are honorable in their manners, and وَأَلْطَفُهُمْ بِأَهْلِهِ. Al-lutf is to be very cautious and recognizable of the needs of the person next to you. I mean, al-lutf. That's why Allah al-Latif, He is aware of our needs, so He treats us in relation to what we need. He knows our vulnerabilities. So to be latif with your family is to be aware. So if I have an issue that my wife or my husband, and sometimes domestic violence goes both ways, to be fair with the brothers, you have to be aware of what are the backgrounds of your wife or your husband, what type of issues they were raised in, and then to be aware and then try to deal with that. Not just demand what you have inherited as ABC of marriage, and then if you don't see that, you're gonna be going, outrageous and aggressive, and in that perspective. The Prophet ﷺ taught us another thing. لا يفرق مؤمن المؤمن. Let no one hate his wife. إن كره منها خلقا. If he hates something about her manners, أحب منها خلقا آخر. He will love something else. No one is perfect. I mean, you might not like the way that your wife is, can't control her hand in spending, and that's creating a lot of problems in the family. But she might be a good mother. She might be a very good patient person with you in the house. Or someone else could be, and she could be triggered very fast, and she can get angry and raise her voice. But she could be a very good person who raises the kids, being responsible next to you, help you in the house. The same thing, if the wife doesn't like something about her husband, he might be a good father, he might be a good... I mean, we need to be looking in the general aspect of what is the best in general, and make, be fair. Allah made these, standards. He said, فَمَنْ يَعْمَلْ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ خَيْرًا يَرَى وَمَنْ يَعْمَلْ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ شَرًّا يَرَى. Allah will weigh things at the day of judgment in the very smallest particles or whatever. And upon that, it will decide if you're going to go to heaven or hell. No one is complete, that's what we know for sure. I will finish, to be prompt in time, with the most known issue about, that Islam allowed people to hit and to beat. And I'm here quoting from the verse in Surah An-Nisa, verse 34, الرجال قوامون على النساء بما فضل الله بعضهم على بعض وبما أنفقوا من أموالهم فالصالحات قانتات حافظات للغيب بما حفظ الله واللاتي تخافون نشوزهن فعظوهن واهجروهن في المضاجع واضربوهن فإن أطعنكم فلا تبغوا عليهن سبيلا إن الله كان عليا كبيرا. The translation goes as, men are the protectors and maintainers of women because Allah has given the one of more strength than the other, and because they support them from their means. Therefore the righteous women are devoutly obedient and guard in the husband's absence what Allah would want them to guard. As to those women on whose part you fear disloyalty and ill conduct, admonish them first, next refuse to share their beds, and last lead them, and then between parentheses lightly. But if they return to obedience, seek not against them means of annoyance, for Allah is most high and great above all. People of who mean harm of Islam, and people who are ignorant about Islam, happens to be Muslims, they come and take the literal meaning from this text, and they say, okay, it says, beat them. And it doesn't even say in the translation lightly, it's the interpretation. We say this is the understanding. Who is the number one translator and interpreter of the Quran? Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And I have 23 even before Islam. From the time he was born sallallahu alaihi wasallam till the time he died and he met his Lord, it was never recorded any case of abuse on his behalf. His own wife Aisha, we have a hadith that says, ما رفع رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يده قط. The Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم never raised his hand ever, إلا أن يكون مجاهدا في سبيل الله. Unless he was in a battle, he was raised his hand. And then another hadith, he never hit any maid or servant ever, or child. So if I have the number one translation, interpretation of the Quran as the character of the Prophet ﷺ, and I have the ayah and the other verses of the Quran tells me, لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. Indeed, in the Prophet ﷺ and the Messenger of Allah, there was a role model, a good role model. And none of that demonstrated the concept of beating. So why I am interpreting it in my own perspective as the literal meaning? Number one. Number two, when I talk about the issue of beating in Islam, I see it in the verb daraba. Daraba in the Arabic language can mean two things. The literal meaning of beating, and it means to keep distance between you and someone. For example, in Surah Al-Muzammil, at the last verse of Surah Al-Muzammil, عَلِمَ اللَّهُ أَنَّ سَتَضْرِبُونَ فِي الْأَرْضِ, that you will travel and travel far distances. And he used the term ضَرَبَ, تَضْرِبُونَ فِي الْأَرْضِ. Do I go and hit the floor like that? No. تَضْرِبُون means to travel. So, if I look at the verse, and I have that you talk to them first, and then you don't share the bed with them as a second, it fits perfectly that you keep distance more further between you and them, not to beat them literally. And if I look at the example of the Prophet himself, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he had issues with his wife, what did he say? Go back to your family houses. And then the verse came in Surah Al-Tahrim and in Surah Al-Talaq, if you wish to be with the Prophet or not, Allah gave him the choice, do they want to stay with the Prophet or not. So the practice himself, when he had problems with his own wife, like everyone have issues, he told them, go back and stay with your families. So he practiced, as the way I understand it, that the term فَضْرِبُهُنْ as keep distance between you and them. And even with the interpretation, and I will finish with this, for the beating, all the scholars agree that it is meant to be a symbolic reference of being annoyed or disagreeing on her, manners and the way she behaves with you. And the only thing you can use, although I'm not in support of that, I am in support of what I stated, my understanding means daraba, to keep distance, but also in reference to those people who are saying, using the beating, it was conditioned by being more of a symbolic reference by using a toothbrush, a siwak. So if someone is angry at his wife, you're supposed to, if you want to do get a siwak, a toothbrush, and show some sort of disagreement with her. And I would finish with a quote, 3 quotes actually. The first one from Imam al-Bukhari in his Sahih. And he said, if you study Imam al-Bukhari, his Sahih, the topics and the way he sorts the index is fiqh by itself. You study the fiqh from the topics. He said, بَابُ مَا يُكْرَهْ فِي ضَرْبِ النِّسَاءِ. What is not preferred. So he already declared it as something what? Not preferred in Islam. Then, Imam Ata, he was one of the Imam al-Haram. He was one of the Tabi'een, one of the greatest scholars in our history. Narrated to him through Imam Ibn al-Arabi, the well-known faqih of the school of Imam Maliki. He said, the Ibn al-Arabi narrating to the Tabi'i Ata, he said, Ata saying, لا يضربها, in narration to this verse, he shall not hit her. وَإِنْ أَمَرَهَا وَنَهَاهَا فَلَمْ تُطِعْهُ, even if he orders her something and she doesn't obey him, he will not hit her. These are the words of Imam Ata. وَلَكِنْ يَغْضَبْ عَلَيْهَا, but he will be angry at her. And then Al-Qadi Ayyad, one of the greatest scholars in our history, also said, هَذَا مِنْ فِقْهِ عَطَاء, this conclusion that even if she disobeys him, he should not go into force and beating, is part of the knowledge of fiqh of Imam Ata, that you only get angry at her and you do not use force in that perspective. And he said, فَهَذَا مِنْ فَهْمِهِ بِالشَّرِيعَةِ وَوُقُوفِهِ عَلَى مَظَانِّ الْإِجْتِهَادِ, this is part of his real understanding of the wholesome concept of Sharia, that it brought, Allah revealed Sharia to bring benefits and prevent harm. This is what we say. أنزل الله الشريعة لجلب المصالح ولدرء المفاسد, to bring benefits and to prevent harm. So this goes in harmony with that. And the last thing that I will be quoting would be a reference into this hadith by Dr. Jamal Badawi, who is well known, and he was at ISNA also. He said, as defined by the hadith, it is not permissible to strike anyone's face, cause any bodily harm, or even be harsh. What the hadith qualifies as darban ghayra mubarrih, light strike or tap, was interpreted by early jurists as a symbolic use of siwak, the toothbrush. They further qualified permissible striking as that which leaves no mark on the body. It is interesting that this latter, 14 centuries old qualifier, is the criterion used in contemporary American law to separate a light and harmless tap from abuse in the legal sense. This makes it clear that even this extreme last resort and lesser of the two evils, measure that may save a marriage, does not meet the definitions of physical abuse or family violence or wife battering in the 20th century law and liberal democracies, where such extremes are so commonplace that they are seen as national concerns. This is the comments of Dr. Badawi in relation to even the term, the beating, that it should be a light tap, a symbolic one using a swag. I'm not in favor of that even. As I said, I am in true belief that the Prophet demonstrated for us how should we understand that verse. He never engaged in that. He practiced it when he had problems with his wife, that he sent the family, if you don't want to be with me, then go back to your wife. If we cannot communicate in Sakinah, then everyone should go his own way and let us not go into aggression toward each other. I hope that we can build more on this understanding in the future, inshallah ta'ala. We pray that all our houses will be free from domestic violence. Allahumma ameen wa assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Sakinah, 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 Sakinah.